What's going on, everyone? My name is Jake. This is where I talk capes, and today we are here to finally talk about the X-Men cast. Because we finally have the X-Men cast. Because at D23, Kevin Feige took to the stage for the X-Men panel, for the X-Men announcement. It was revealed that X-Men will be releasing on the 5th of May 2028. He was joined on stage by Sadie Sink, who he basically said, you know, has everyone heard of a movie called Spider-Man Brand New Day? Well, in that, Sadie Sink's in it, and she is Jean Grey. She is playing Jean Grey. Sorry, I feel like the spoiler embargo on that has gone now that Kevin Feige got on the stage at D23 and used her to announce the cast for the X-Men. But if you haven't, feel free to comment and help me feed the algorithm, please. Be angry at me in the comments for spoiling the movie that everyone's seen. But Kevin brought Sadie out on stage, and I have my thoughts on Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. I'm a big fan. I do want to do another video speaking about that in the near future. Basically, Kevin brought Sadie out and said, you know, do you want to meet the rest of the cast? Now, we don't have a full cast yet. There are quite a few names still to come. I think this cast announcement, I felt a little bit bare. I don't want to say underwhelming because it didn't feel underwhelming. The fact that we have X-Men news is never going to be underwhelming to me. But it did feel like maybe they wanted more. It felt like they held off from Comic-Con to have the big reveal at D23 and have all the focus be just on the X-Men. But it also feels like maybe they didn't get all the deals over the line in time. They didn't get all the actors signed on in time, and that's why this reveal it feels a little bit, I don't want to say half-baked because I like all of these announcements, but you know, it feels like maybe they wanted more to have been announced. But anyway, let's get into it. Who else was announced as the other castmates? Well, first of all, we had Kit Connor revealed as Cyclops. We kind of knew this for the last week or so. We've seen the scripts that Kit Connor had officially signed on as Cyclops for the last about week. I don't have any major thoughts on this. I've not seen Kit Connor in anything, to be perfectly honest. But from what I've heard, he's a good actor. And, you know, he's in that kind of same age as Sadie Sink. I think looking at the pair of them, they look like Jean and Scott. So yeah, into it. Excited to see where that goes. Next up was Christopher Abbott, an actor I didn't realise I was as familiar with as I was, but Christopher Abbott has been announced as Charles Xavier. Again, I'm chuffed with this. An actor that I'm not super familiar with, but I think that only leads into it. I think that only gives more excitement to me. I'll explain why in a minute. Up next then was Samara Weaving as Emma Frost. We've known this for about 10 days now. 10 days, nearly 2 weeks. I am absolutely in love with this cast, with this choice. I fucking adore Samara Weaving. I think she is fantastic, and she will be an incredible Emma Frost. Then, one of the biggest pieces of news from this is that Indy Navarrete of Obsession fame has been cast as Rogue, a casting that I am absolutely in love with. I think she's going to be incredible at this role. Then one of the biggest eyebrow raisers was that Maya Boyd, someone I hadn't heard of, has been cast as Storm. Looking into it, Maya Boyd has one screen credit, I believe just one short film, and is mostly known for theatre and musicals. She's been the lead in a couple Broadway musicals, but this is her first feature film, and she's going to be playing Storm. And finally, as everyone stood on the stage, Adam Driver then appeared on the big screen behind them to announce that he will be playing Nathaniel Milbury, which was confirmed on social media by Marvel, that he will be playing Mr. Sinister. That is class. So I'm just going to go through these actors one by one. I'm going to give a little bit of my opinion on them, talk a little bit about each actor and the character they're playing, and then I want to talk about the kind of wider context of the X-Men going forward, because as I said, it does feel like there is some things that we're missing. First up, Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. I thought she was fantastic in Spider-Man Brand New Day. I really like Sadie Sink. I've liked Sadie Sink for a while, and out of all of the sort of Stranger Things kids, when that show was ending, she's the one I was the most excited to see what she would do, because kind of felt like out of all of them, she's the one who cared about it. Not cared about it at least, but was going to depend on the nostalgia of I was in Stranger Things at the least. And I understand that some of the other kids are, you know, focusing on like music and doing other things, and obviously Gaten, she wants to make dumb movies, and quite right, shout out him. But she kind of felt like the only one prepared. It kind of felt like in a way that like Noah Schnapp is just going to be Tom Felton for the rest of his life. You know, Millie Bobby Brown is going to be doing Netflix movies for a while, it feels. She felt like the only one that had a super interesting future immediately ahead of her, and that's been confirmed essentially with this. I thought she was brilliant in Brand New Day, as I said, and the way that Brand New Day kind of left things, it leaves us perfectly to set up a world that, you know, that hates and fears mutants. Now that's something I'm going to get into in another video, but just know that I'm incredibly excited with that choice. Next up then is Kit Connor as Cyclops. Most people know him from Heartstopper with Joe Locke. Joe Locke also in the MCU. So again, Heartstopper, haven't watched it. He's in Warfare, apparently. I haven't watched that either. I think he's in the new Elden Ring movie that's coming up as well, so that's a big year for him in 2028. He's not an actor I'm familiar with him as an actor. I know who Kit Connor is. I know what he's in. I've just not seen him in anything. But by all accounts, good actor, charismatic, and I don't really hear anyone that upset with this. My thing is, I still wanted Cooper Hoffman, but I still think Cooper Hoffman, there's roles for Cooper Hoffman to get into here. But outside of that, I think, Kit Connor seems like a good choice, looks the part, and yeah, as I say, no one seems that mad about it, which is something that, to me, is quite exciting. One of the ones I'm the most excited about here is Christopher Abbott as Professor X. As I mentioned, he's an actor that I didn't think I was as familiar with as I am now. Again, I'm not super familiar with him. I haven't seen him in loads and loads and loads of things, but from what I have seen him in, one I enjoyed and one I don't have any particularly strong feelings about. So he played the foreigner in Kraven the Hunter, the man that can hypnotise you by counting to 10, whereas I guess now he can be Charles and do that to hypnotise you instead of having to count to 10 or whatever. And I don't have any particularly strong feelings about anyone's performance in Kraven the Hunter. My main memories of Kraven the Hunter is Chameleon singing Harry Styles, but it's just Harry Styles on it. They've just needle dropped Harry Styles, but pretended that Chameleon's singing it. And then Russell Crowe's accent, because I love that anytime Russell Crowe does an accent, you can hear Russell Crowe first before the accent. Like, it sounds like Russell, instead of it sounding like, an American guy or a Russian guy or an Italian guy or whatever, it's always like, oh, that's Russell Crowe doing an American or an Italian or a Russian accent. Those are my two main memories from Kraven the Hunter. But Christopher Abbott was also in Poor Things, a movie that I think is fantastic. He played Bella's kind of original husband. He plays who's sort of the villain of the piece, or one of the villains of the piece. And yeah, I think he was great in that. I don't have any complaints for him being in here. I think the sort of high society, well-to-do dickhead who is trying to control people and has money and thinks that he can just control everything because he's smarter than you and whatever, and he has this sort of claim to over Bella. I think, you maybe tone that down a little bit. We get where I want to be with Professor X. So again, Christopher Abbott, not an actor I'm super familiar with, but this is one thing I want to touch on, and I'm going to touch on it in a minute as well with Maya Boyd. The fact that there are actors that maybe not everyone's super familiar with getting these huge roles. Let's be honest, Professor X and Storm are two of the biggest roles in the next phase of the MCU. They're two of the biggest characters in the next phase of the MCU. They could have so easily chose actors with prestige or actors with a lot more a lot more credits to them and a lot more name value than your Christopher Abbotts and your Maya Boyds. That's no disrespect to them, but they could have chose much bigger actors with more recognisable names, like a Jamie Lawson, for example, for Storm. And I've seen people talking about potentially an Alexander Skarsgård as an Xavier. That's again an actor with more name recognition than Christopher Abbott. So to me, the fact that these actors have taken these roles and have won these roles, that just screams that their auditions were perfect. Because look at who was cast as Charles in the past. We've got Patrick Stewart, who was a genuine massive star, and you've got James McAvoy, who was on the path to being a huge star already at that point. Now, I understand you could make the argument, he had a couple of sort of big movie credits where he wasn't the main, the lead character, the lead actor, in the way that Christopher Abbott kind of has. But I still think, looking at McAvoy back then, he was further ahead of where Christopher Abbott is now. So, to me, the fact that he gets this role, which they could have reserved for an absolute A-lister, they could have thrown a bag, just a sack of money with a dollar sign on it at, pick an Oscar winner. That, to me, just screams that he had an incredible audition and knocked it out of the fucking park. And that's the exact same with Maya Boyd. I'm not going to spend too much time on Storm, purely because I don't know enough about Maya Boyd to talk about Maya Boyd. As I say, she's been in some musicals and is primarily a stage actor. And this is going to be her second screen credit, I believe. Which just fascinates me endlessly, and again screams that she is the right pick because she has had this killer audition for it. So, very excited with those. I mentioned as well briefly how much I love Samara Weaving. I think she is incredible. I don't think there's been a movie I've seen with Samara Weaving I've not liked. And I think on the other hand of that, I don't think she's an actor that has ever brought a movie up out from being a bad movie for me. But at the same time, I've never watched a film of hers I haven't liked. So she's an actor that I like. She's an actor that I associate with with a good time at least. She's an actor I associate with quality films. She is an actor that I think is one of the more underrated out there, especially after watching Over Your Dead Body this year. If you're unfamiliar, Over Your Dead Body is a film released earlier on this year, directed by Jorma from The Lonely Island, starring her and Jason Segel, where a couple go on a romantic weekend away to like save their marriage, but in reality they both have plans to kill the other, and it goes wrong, and it's Benny Hill kind of, and it's weird and gross and fun and gory and silly and slapstick, but like just endlessly charming, and she is endlessly charming in it. I think she's fantastic in it. And again, there's not a bad Samara Weaving role from my understanding, from my watching of Samara Weaving over the years. She is fantastic. I think she's great. And I think she's the perfect choice for Emma Frost. Then let's come on to the most divisive announcement from all of this, and that is that Indy Navarrete will be playing Rogue. I think this is fantastic. I think especially if we introduce Rogue as an antagonist, as someone struggling to control her powers, as someone, on a knife's edge, ready to snap at any time, just with this fragility and instability riding at all times. That's Indy Navarrete. That's what she's done in Obsession. Now, I can't claim to have watched anything else that she's been in. I've not seen Superman and Lois, and to be perfectly honest, I couldn't tell you anything else that Indy Navarrete has been in. So yeah, there's people saying, oh, well, she just got the role because of this one. Yeah, that's what happens. You do a good performance in a big movie that makes lots of money. Studios go, they did a good performance in a big movie that made lots of money. That's who we want on. Directors look at you having a good performance and go, I want this actor to be in my movie. That's exactly how that works. You don't put up stinker after, Gal Gadot has a career, never mind. I retract my previous statement that I was making about how you don't put up stinkers and continue to get work. But apart from that, I think she's a perfect casting for this. She's proved that she's an incredible actor who can carry the emotional weight and the instability and vulnerability that a young Rogue should have. I think bringing her in as an antagonist and possibly even doing the story where she steals Carol Danvers' powers would be an incredibly interesting way to introduce Rogue in the MCU. I love Rogue as a member of the X-Men, but to be perfectly honest, that's why I'm not entirely interested in Anna Paquin's version, is because she just joins. There is no chaos, there is no instability, there is no sort of journey, really. She's kind of just there to go, oh, Logan's here. Logan's cool. I like Logan. But I have seen quite a bit of pushback on Indy Navarrete's choice. But I have seen quite a bit of pushback on Indy Navarrete's casting as Rogue. I've seen some of the opposition to it saying, oh, they've just cast her because she's the shiny new toy from the new big film. And things along those lines. But I feel like a lot of the time I click on those profiles that are saying that, and then they're saying, oh, I wanted Odessa Zion because I saw a photo of Odessa Zion. And it will, like, you didn't know who Odessa Zion was before Marty Supreme. So all you're doing is picking the shiny new thing from the hot new movie, but you're just skipping back one. I think it's a completely disingenuous way to look at it, and the further I look into a lot of these criticisms when they kind of follow that route and that route kind of crumbles, is that it's about her body image, and how she's not, how she's a lot thinner than they would maybe like to see Rogue on the screen, and it's weird and gross. So, that's not to say that everyone who is criticising the casting of Indy Navarrete has a weird and gross and misogynistic reason to do so. Just kind of feels like every time I've seen it online, it ends up boiling down to that. But no, truthfully, I do think she is going to be fantastic. As I mentioned, I think Nikki in Obsession is she's shown everything I would want someone playing Rogue to show from that role. And yeah, very interested to see what she does with Rogue and how they introduce Rogue going forward. And finally, probably the biggest news then is that Adam Driver will be playing Mr. Sinister. I love this. Me and my friend Morgan have spoke at length about Adam Driver maybe coming into the MCU and how we don't think it was ever going to be for a big role that he would need to take, 4, 5, 6 films to do. He just maybe wanted to do something he could do once or twice, drop in and out, maybe even 3 times up to, and just sort of, come in and out when he pleases. Obviously, he turned down Mr. Fantastic. I know he's taking Mr. Sinister, a role that, you could do in a film or two. But it doesn't have the insane commitment that the X-Men franchise is going to need, especially going forward. And it kind of feels like the perfect place for him. I think he's perfect for Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister is one of my favourite X-Men villains, and he has been, since I was a kid getting into X-Men. I always just loved this like Victorian freak cloning himself and being all over the top and weird and wearing a fucking diamond in his head and shit. Like, I've always thought he was cool. And I don't really have much more to say than that Adam Driver is fantastic. You need someone who can go big and audacious and over the top. But you also need someone who can carry the gravity of that. You need like a good actor who can kind of switch it on a dime and turn it on and off and go from having the fun to being really deadpan and really serious. And I think Adam Driver is perfect. I don't have much more to say other than I really, really, really like Adam Driver as Mr. Sinister, and I'm so happy that he's the person we get to see bring Mr. Sinister to life on the big screen for the first time. So as it stands, we have 7 members of the cast, and we only have 4 who are traditionally always good guys, members of the X-Men. I understand that the Phoenix Force takes over, Gene, we'll get to that at some point, but right now, at the start, we have, Jean and Scott and Aurora, and then also Professor X. That's only 4 real, traditional, always members of the X-Men. Now, I know that Rogue traditionally joins the X-Men, but begins as a villain, which I think is the most interesting way to take it. I know that Emma Frost is, and sometimes as, and kind of flips in and out of being a member of the X-Men, but it's more traditionally a member of the Hellfire Club. And we also have Mr. Sinister. So, looking at it there are so many holes in that cast, so many gaps in that cast for where we could go. Obviously, rumours have been circling that Charles Melton has been cast as Beast. I think that indicates that maybe they wanted to get this deal over the line but couldn't get it finalised in time. Maybe, I think with the Cooper Hoffman stuff for Cyclops, I don't think there's that much smoke without fire. Maybe Kit Connor came in and blew their minds, so they say, well, how about this? Do you maybe want to do something else? Maybe Beast, for example, which maybe stalled that. And you look at that, we have a Charles, no Magneto. We have a single member of the Hellfire Club. We have no Colossus or Nightcrawler or Gambit or Wolverine, which I don't think we're going to get immediately anyway, but still. No Iceman, no Angel, no Beast, as I mentioned. Like, there are so many more characters to come. And I think Kevin Feige said on stage that this isn't all of it, obviously. So I think that's my one thing. I think it didn't feel underwhelming because I'm interested in all of these choices, but you did look at it and go, where's the rest? So it's very interesting to see where this goes. I think especially with this specific group of characters, you have a couple of ideas of where things might go, but there's nothing that really points to any kind of major storylines that they're going to be drawn from or maybe adapting for this film in 2028. So I am excited. There's a lot to come, clearly. There's still a lot to go, but I think with this first announcement, this first group of mutants cast is a very exciting group to follow. I think as well, there's so many possible ways that this could go, and there are so many more mutants that we could see cast. So I'm just excited. I'm really excited, man. So let me know what you thought of this X-Men announcement down below. Do you like all of these choices? Do you not like all of these choices? Or anything that you think, oh, this person would have been better in this role? What are the mutants that you're excited to see cast still? We don't have Mystique either. That's another one that I missed. There's so many more mutants to come, and I'm so excited. And this first batch is to me nothing but a good sign. So, thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to show this around to all your friends. Tell them about the handsome man on the internet with the good X-Men opinions. As always, guys, my name is Jake. This is where I talk capes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.